the Microsoft office here in San Francisco for UC Trends 2020, our series of video interviews taking you inside some of the world's biggest technology companies. Microsoft are arguably the biggest technology provider in the world, and its collaboration platform Microsoft Teams has been its fastest growing business application of all time. Lan Yi is the general manager for Teams, so I spoke to her about her plans for the platform and also get her opinion on the collaboration market in general. Hi Lan, thanks so much for inviting us into the Microsoft offices in San Francisco.
You're welcome, my pleasure.
No, it really is our pleasure to come in and so excited to talk to you about Microsoft Teams. But first, before we started on Teams, I wanted to get a bit of a personal angle from you. How did you come to be involved in the collaboration industry, and how did you become GM for Teams?
Yeah, sure. I actually been in Microsoft for 20 years. Originally, I'm from Shanghai, China. I came to the States for college. I actually came from a pretty unconventional background. I went to a liberal arts college. I had a double major in studio art and computer science, so I think my school never had anybody in Microsoft before. And I got in touch with Microsoft because of they actually have a female technician scholarship online. I applied, I got the scholarship, and through that connection, I brought here for an interview. And then next thing I know, I've been here for 20 years. In my 20 years at Microsoft, I worked on a very wide spectrum of products. From initially, I was heavily involved in the digital media industry. Worked on Windows Media, Windows Media Center, and then later Zoom, Microsoft's entertainment services, music, streaming, gaming, Windows Phone.
20 years, you've had a lot of time to do things.
And so after I ran out of things to do in the consumer space, I figured I've never done enterprise. That's how I ended up in Link. And that was about a year after we acquired Skype.
Okay.
So since then, we've been on a series of convergence journey. I led the Link to Skype rebranding. And then after that, I spearheaded the convergence strategy from Link to Teams. Actually, at that time, it's Skype for Business to Teams. And then in the last 2 years, I've led the team to build the Teams to bring our unified communication capability to Teams from ground up and built it in our cloud architecture, cloud stack. And there we are.
So that's
it's
a busy time over
Yes.
20 years, and you've been across the whole
It's a lot of fun, yes.
The whole Microsoft communication
Yes,
and collaboration
yes.
stack. So Teams itself, fastest Microsoft business growing business application of all time.
Yep.
As you released recently, 13 million daily active users.
13 million
Probably
daily
more
active
than that
and
by
16 million, 19 million weekly active user. That was June. Yeah, that was.
So
June.
the numbers will have gone up since then.
Yes, definitely.
So what do you attribute the success of Teams to? What would you say the secret ingredient is in Microsoft Teams that's made it so popular so quickly?
Yeah, I think that I was thinking, Microsoft Teams is actually a really good embodiment of a lot of things that we believe in this company, as Microsoft company, our cultural value. The first thing is, let me tell you, actually, can I tell you a little bit, an anecdote for my interview? So when I first got my interview with Microsoft, my interviewer at that time, college interviewer at that time, actually asked me, as any interviewer will ask, why do you choose to interview with Microsoft? I said, well, Microsoft is a company that keeps reinventing itself, and that's why I'm interested. Now, 20 years later, when I looked at, I still remember the line that I used, but I was like, I may not know what I was talking about 20 years ago,
but it was good.
It was actually spot on. Teams itself is like that. We started from a chat-based communication, persistent chat-based app. And then, you can see the velocity of changes that we've made in the last 2 years just to bring to where we are. It has flourished and really evolved into this workplace and teamwork for Office 365. And it's becoming a platform where we see a lot of the business start integrating their business process. And we have a complete set of unified communication capabilities that we brought into Teams as well. So it's been constantly reinventing itself, and it takes grit. And the other thing I think that we've gotten better and better is the customer focus, because it doesn't just take a will and desire to change. You have to change with a purpose. And over the years, we've got a lot better at just develop a much higher fidelity understanding of our customer, right? What their sentiments are, not just the IT decision makers, but also our end user, what they do, and what's their pain points and all that. And that customer focus really made these changes much more purposeful.
Yeah, and we were talking before about the specific work that you've done for market verticals, and I suppose that just echoes that, bespoke, making that experience bespoke for particular user groups.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. For example, in the last year, we've shipped our solutions for Microsoft Teams for healthcare. We had also solutions for frontline worker, and we continue to augment our portfolio and capabilities for Microsoft EDU. That is all building on top of the foundation of what Teams is about.
And you talked about the culture when you joined, and how that's probably changed in the 20 years.
Yeah.
What's it like on a day-to-day basis to be inside the Microsoft Teams team? What's the personality like? What are the people like? What's the culture like?
Well, I think the first thing come to my mind is fast-paced, very, very fast-paced. So it's fast-paced to a point sometimes it could feel like it's chaotic. It's lots of ambiguity, lots of changes, and this is fun. I told my team, ambiguity is actually a good thing, because it helps us to not feel beholden to the established norm. And you can change the assumption, challenge any kind of assumptions. And in the way that we function in the face of ambiguity is how to then identify pockets of clarity. And that helps ground ourselves in our execution. The other thing is, we try to change from this, in the old Microsoft, or in a lot of our heritage is about change management, right? When something change happened, we try to manage the change. Instead of trying to think of change as something needs to be managed, we have a culture where change is actually constant. And in a dynamic environment where the market and the customer needs changes all the time, we just have to enjoy that and thrive in that kind of environment. So, the skills that we encourage our team to develop in our engineering culture is about how do we identify opportunities and risks when there are changes, right? And then how to develop the skills to provide predictability in terms of how we can take advantage of these changes. So, in the end, I think we grown from, this culture of change is scary, fixed, and we have to manage it, to we just embrace it every day. And that has really had a very profound impact in how our engineering culture, how our product culture had evolved.
And that pace of development, I was going to ask, if you look back over sort of the last 12 to 18 months and you had to pick out any particular highlights or standout moments. I realise that's difficult as it's been so busy, but what are your particular highlights, maybe new features or some of the landmarks you've reached?
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of highlights. The first, of course, is our momentum. We were very excited to actually release the momentum numbers, because we were both thrilled but also inspired by the reception that we got from our customer. The other highlights, I would say, we have I mentioned the change. Change is hard, especially if you have a business that's already quite established, such as Sky for Business. So, and I was the person that actually spearheaded our convergence strategy. So making a change like this, where you have a lot of these customers that's already on an established product, established solution, how do we take them and evolve to this next generation technology and product? That's a pretty big change. And so one of the standout moments you were asking is, for me personally, it was just to see how, our customer, some of our really big customers have made the journey completed, including our own Microsoft, completed their journey moving from Sky for Business to Teams. Sometimes we call this changing wheels on a running car. It's pretty scary, but we made it. Our customer made it. And there are really big companies that have completed the transition. and also very small companies that have completed the transition. And not only that happened, but we also have developed a set of tools and insights to help us gauge the customer sentiment before and after the change, so that we know that, what's the outcome, right?
Yeah.
And we're very encouraged by that outcome. And I would say the third thing is, despite, we're obviously very ambitious, we're very encouraged by our momentum, we have a lot of catch up to do, but we also didn't stop on innovation. We continue to push the team and push the envelope of our technology to bring more innovations to the market. I don't know if you saw Satya's latest tweets.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
It was I think it was the most viewed tweets in last year or two Satya ever had. We shipped our recent this thing we call internally Magic Whiteboard. It was, if you're a remote user and someone is doing meetings in a room where they have a physical space whiteboard, and we can capture the whiteboard and make people transparent. That's really cool, and that's the kind of AI infused innovations that we continue to push the technology boundary, but also really try to find ways where how do we leverage these cutting edge technologies, but also then connecting them to really tangible and practical human value. And that's the type of things that we're obsessed about.
Well, that's a really good example, and the whiteboard feature, using that AI tech. And I was going to ask about different trends. We talk about emerging technology. We hear a lot about artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Yeah.
And I know Microsoft, there's cool stuff on the horizon with HoloLens in terms of AR, VR. In terms of emerging technology trends, but also workplace trends that have driven the development of teams, what do you see as the main trends that are going to impact sort of how your team develops new features and the platform in general going forward over the next few years?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would probably say is at a cultural level, the kind of trends that we see. It doesn't matter if the company is big or small. We're clearly seeing there's a need to evolve the company's culture towards a more open, inclusive, collaborative environment. And this is really just driven by a number of factors. The nature and dynamics of the business is changing all the time. You've got people and team that come and go, and with that kind of dynamic environment, you really need to switch our product thinking from focusing only on the work that needs to be done towards more the team and people that makes work happen. So Teams is really, this is the whole philosophy of Teams is built on people as the center of work and collaboration. And that trend we continue to see, companies embracing. Actually, a good example I had recently, I was reading a lot of the customer feedback after they made the transformation. One of the company mentioned, they use Teams when they're actually going through a merger acquisition. They have a big headquarter, just acquired a new subsidiary, and trying to figure out how to merge the two. And it's, they had comments like, Teams is such a lifesaver. While we're going through this merger acquisition process. And if you think about and you read what they did, this is really a good example of putting people at the center of the work. Because when you put two different companies together, they are on different processes and technologies, and that's really hard to bring them together. And you start with bring people together, and Team just happened to be this product that bring people together and let them figure out what the process and how do they want to communicate and what kind of culture that they want to establish together. So it's just very natural, in this dynamic business environment. And the other thing that we see that's driven this cultural transformation is we've talked a lot about this workplace becomes more and more diverse. There's, I think, 5 generations of work. We have some research that has shown. And people just have very diverse way of communication depending. And when you have such a diverse spectrum of workers with very different technology background, very different preferences on how they want to communicate. Some people may just be natural born video person, regardless of age. Some people prefers the fast, efficient, text-based communication. Some people may just be limited by the ability, the type of communication that they can do. And in that kind of very diverse environment, you really need a way for everybody to express themselves. And they need to have, ways to make their voice heard. And so how do you have a communication platform and a product that let people do that? I was actually, one of the most inspiring and touching moment for me, I talked to a lot of customers, was talking to an instructor from actually you're from London, right?
Well, yeah.
It was an instructor from the Westminster College of London. And he was effusive when he came to me and talk about how Teams transformed the way that he teaches. And I was like, tell me why. I did not think that, we built the product with this kind of transformational impact on people, but I would love to hear your story. So he told me a lot, but one of the examples that he told me that was really struck a chord with me is he has this deaf student that, they was never able to talk or communicate with people in their class usually. The student will come in with an instructor with a sign language, person that always accompany him in the class. So this instructor, he came in and he basically turned his teaching using Teams. Everybody comes in, whether if it's their mobile or desktop device, they sit on the table, the kids, they sit on the table, and then he just uses Teams for teaching, whether if it's watching a video or doing Q&A in the class. And because of that, this student now is able to participate.
Because it's a visual medium.
Because it's visual, but he can also text, right? Ask questions. And there were kids in that class that he was never able to talk before. And for the first time in the class, he's now communicating with them freely. And that was where I was like, wow, I did not think about that. It is a product that actually makes these kind of voice, everybody gets a way to express their voice. And so that's a lot of a lot of our thinking is around, and you will see a lot of innovations around inclusive communication, inclusive collaboration. In a way, the whiteboard technology also is driven from that desire because, the problem we're trying to solve is sometimes when, you have a remote participant, people in the room starts drawing on the whiteboard.
They're neglected.
And the remote participant, first, it's, the person most likely get neglected. Secondly, you would never be able to, it's very hard to follow what's going on in the whiteboard. So, we're using our AI technology, we zoom into the whiteboard, we clear up all the noises, we make it brighter, get rid of the glare, and then we make people disappear. And that, just makes the remote experience, right? Remote participants experience so much more inclusive. And it's technologies and intelligence like that we're very driven and motivated to help, connecting these AI technology, right? And deliver that to our end user with real tangible value.
That example you've given of the teacher with the deaf student, as you said, that's pretty hard for you to imagine. But if we could go forward in time to New Year's Eve next year, and you could look back at 2020 to come, what other examples like that would have meant that the year for Teams was a success for you?
Yeah, there are lots of examples, and I think the other thing that I'm very, very passionate about, also seeing in the workplace is, the workplace today is full of technologies, right? If you think about 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, we meet, people hop on a plane and they see each other face to face. Like you and me, we can talk, right? We express ourselves and
could have done this through Teams, yeah.
Yeah, high bandwidth. But actually nowadays we would do it through Teams. But when you do it through Teams, if you think about just an average meeting, right? You will have an online meeting, right? You have people in the remote, you have people in the room, they'll bring their devices, mobile most likely. I think you have a mobile device here, and you probably have some sort of headsets, and you probably have speakers and cameras and all that, right? So if you think about a typical meeting like that, all of a sudden, and smartphones, all of a sudden, you have these additional sets of ears and eyes that people are bringing to the room. They have speakers, microphones, and all that. The complexity of the technology in this case could be enablers, but they could also be complexity multipliers. I've seen far too many times people walk into a meeting, they accidentally join the meeting. You all of a sudden it cause a lot of echo in the room, right? Those type of things happen a lot. So one thing I think is happening, we actually did some user research that's technology agnostic, just to get a sense of how people feel their meeting experiences today. Not the tool, not the technology they use, just general their meeting experience. And it turns out that almost half of the users that we've surveyed feel really dissatisfied about their meeting because it's stressful and it's hard to get out of it, right? Get effective results out of it because there's so much interference, distractions, and you have so many apps and tools you have to switch between, trying to pull the content together, and after the meetings and notes, and just a lot of these context switching and a lot of technology that you have to tame in order to do your job. So I think we're just scratching surface right now with these technologies. Delivering a high quality meeting is table stake, but is that really enough? People struggling with meeting or with real-time communication technologies, not because of the inefficiencies of the technology, but because the environment they live in are actually increasingly more complex. And these technologies can be enablers, but they're also multiplying the complexity. So then how do we, the quest we have is, how do we evolve our product experience as well as our technology, right? You can't do incremental improvements because a lot of these age-old problems, if you just, the complexity is multiplying.
Yeah, if you keep on throwing technology at it.
You can't solve that problem. So you have to really think differently. And there needs to be a step function difference in terms of how we approach these problems. So that's what very exciting for me is, the more complex the environment are, the bigger the technology challenges are, and the more fun the problem is. And I think that the reward would be higher, more satisfying, because if you think about these additional sets of technologies that people bring into I keep saying it's an enabler too. We're actually not utilizing them. You have these extra sets of eyes and ears, but we're not utilizing them. They're actually complex, making people's life more difficult as opposed to more useful. So a lot of our vision and where we're pushing our envelope is around this notion of, the community of intelligent devices, intelligent edges, and how do we develop this brain in our cloud using our AI assets and deep learning assets to effectively, simplify the experience, make meetings more, make these technologies actually go away so people can focus on what they need to do.
Well, Lan, thank you so much for having us into the Microsoft office and explaining us more about it.
You're welcome. My pleasure.